Welcome to This Week in Evansville. This week, man, I got to tell you, this is going to be great. We've got Micah Beckwith with us today. He is a candidate for lieutenant governor. We're going to learn more about that office and about Micah. And trust me, you're going to get an education today for sure. This program, This Week in Evansville, is produced at City Gate on the east side of Evansville. And pretty soon we're going to be getting the studio finished up and ready for other people to be able to do some programming out of here. And we'll look forward to doing some podcasting with more folks. One of the events coming up at City Gate that we want to remind you about is our Tuesday prayer group that's going to be starting. It's Pray for Evansville. It is the opportunity to get together with other people to pray for our leaders, for our city, for the candidates running for office, and all of that. Just a time of focused, concentrated prayer for our community. And our quick hits, we're going to follow up on something that we talked about last week. We reported that the Lamasco Bar and Grill was up for sale for about $1 million. Amy Word has decided, and now at this point, according to a report from the Evansville Courier and Press, that she is not going to run for school board next year for 2024. She has been on a leave of absence from the school board ever since her arrest last year, and will stay on leave of absence until her trial comes up, and then we'll just see where things go from there. Also, another thing of note is that the liquor license for Lamasco actually was not renewed by the liquor board and is currently on a 90-day temporary permit that expires in early October, so that might affect any decision making you might be coming up with as far as the possibility of buying the Lamasco for $1 million because it may not have a liquor license. Amy is appealing that, and we'll keep you updated on that as more information comes out. All right, now we move on to the main event here. Micah Beckwith is with us. Thanks for taking the time to join us here, Micah.
Yeah, it's good to be with you. Thanks for having me, Johnny.
All right. Now, Lieutenant Governor, this is one of those offices that a lot of people aren't very savvy about what the office entails. So can you give us an idea of what the office is?
Yeah, so the lieutenant governor in Indiana actually has a pretty big responsibility. You got your constitutional duties, but then your statutorial duties. Constitutionally, the lieutenant governor is the president of the Senate, and you cast a tie-breaking vote if there is ever a tie in the Senate, and then you're a heartbeat away from the governor's office. God forbid anything were to happen to the governor while he or she was serving. But there's a lot of influence and leadership that goes into carrying the constitutional duties. I mean, right now the Senate is a place where we really need strong conservative voices inside the walls of the Senate, advocating for conservative values, faith and family values, something that I'm very passionate about. And so I bring a strong backbone, I think, to the world of the Senate. But then statutorily, the lieutenant governor sits on 26 different boards. You head the Board of Agriculture, Housing, Tourism, OCRA, which is Community Rural Development, just to help push just good prosperity and good policy that impacts Hoosiers on a day-to-day life. And I believe that the Republican Party is really the party of purpose. And but we've got to maintain those values, those constitutional values that have made the Republican Party such a strong party over the years. And I feel like in Indiana we've gotten complacent, and there's been a lot of leaders within the Republican Party that just really haven't maintained true conservative Republican principles. And that's one of the reasons I'm jumping into running for lieutenant governor. Is I can bring us back to those principles that really have made us a great party, but also more importantly a great nation.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into kind of the nuts and bolts of the politics of this whole thing. All right?
Sure. Yeah.
First of all, you kind of have the radio guy-like presence there, so it's almost like you have a broadcasting background. But I know that you are actually a pastor. Is what you do for a living, right?
That's right. Yes. Yeah. I do sit in once a week on WIBC in Indianapolis. So I talk about conservative politics, faith and family values. And so, but yes, I'm a pastor at Life Church in Noblesville. We have 4 campuses around the Indianapolis area. And so just being able to go to God's word, figure out what truth is, where truth is, and then just tell people about what's true in our society. So I think politics and faith actually line up a lot, because it's just finding out the best way to live life and go that direction. And God has a mandate and a book and a guideline for every aspect of our life. So it's just finding that out and letting people know.
All right. What do the people in your church think of you running for a state office?
Oh, they love it. I think we're a church that boldly addresses cultural issues, and I think they recognize that politics is a huge part of our society. And the last 50 years in America, the church has really abandoned its duty to steward the world of politics. Our founders really believed that the church would be the moral compass and the conscience of the state. And this idea of separation of church and state was never in the mindset of our founding fathers. They never thought the church was going to be absent from politics. They always wanted the state to stay out of the church, but they knew that faith leaders had to be the moral guide and the compass when it comes to policy, because if not, even John Adams said, this Constitution is wholly inadequate except for a religious and moral people. And what we're seeing is our foundations are degrading underneath our very feet, and we're wondering why is government getting out of control? Well, it's because we haven't had people calling government back to a moral foundation of biblical Judeo-Christian values that say good governance is what God says it is. And so we've got to have the church jump back into the world of politics. And a lot of churches don't like doing it, and a lot of pastors will say, we got to stay out of politics. But I always say, well, where's the gospel? I thought the gospel was supposed to go into every aspect of life, and that includes the world of politics. And so it's just sometimes it's a dark world and it's scary. But my church specifically, they love it, and we are we're all in as a church on being a light in a dark world.
See, you just took away the next point of argument that I was going to have with you was about the whole separation of church and state thing. So you're pretty quick at addressing things up front here.
I've heard the arguments against what I do pretty often, so I've gotten good at addressing those. So.
See, years ago, I ran for public office, and I was pastoring a church, but I had like 30 members in the church, very small, older congregation, and they all hated the fact that I was getting into politics. So.
I always ask people when they say, I don't like what you're doing. I ask them a simple question. It's okay. You don't like me going into the world of politics and preaching the truth of God's word in that world. I will ask them, I'll say, where else am I not allowed to go with the gospel? Because if that's off limits as a mission field, then there are going to be other places that are off limits as mission fields. But Jesus told us the opposite. He said, go into all the world and preach the gospel. And politics is part of all the world. And so, the two most important foundational structures of any society all the way back through world history is religion and politics. Faith of the culture and the society, and the policies that are built upon the faith of that society. It impacts everything that we do as a people. And so really, if we are going to be that city on a hill that Reagan has said that, that he spoke about when he would talk about the United States, it all goes back to, do we understand the Judeo-Christian ethic that we were founded upon? And so pastors have to lead. So I appreciate the fact that you were willing to jump in the world of politics, Johnny, especially, we need more pastors doing that.
Every time somebody says the name Ronald Reagan on this podcast, I want to have the sound of a heavenly choir going, "Whoa!" Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Because I always feel that's where the Republican Party needs to get back to, and they've wandered too far away from Reagan in where we're at right now as a party.
He was a great leader. I mean, he's one of my favorite presidents by far.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Now, you have been a lightning rod for some critics. I found a Facebook page that was, wow.
Only one? You only found one of them? Because there's more out there. I mean, you spend some more time working on
one. But this is kind of one of those, you're going to really love the guy or you're really going to dislike the guy kind of scenarios, I think. But those, one of the things I've seen as a common theme from critics is that you don't know what the office entails, which we started right off the bat talking about what the office entails, right? So, but that seemed to be a pretty big theme for some folks.
I think they will point. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think they'll point to my inexperience as far as politics goes. They'll say, "Well, you haven't held an office," or listen. It's rocket science is one thing. Politics is not rocket science. The Constitution is very simple to understand. The executive branch, legislative branch, judicial branch has very clear duties and roles. It is a citizen legislature. I think career politicians are a problem. I'm a big advocate of term limits for that reason. And I don't think our founders set up a system that is somehow outside the scope of the normal person's mindset. Like, I think it was designed to be a outsider's legislature. And so that normally when people say, well, you don't have experience, you don't know what the role is, that's typically coming from those who are on the inside who want to protect themselves from others playing the game because they want to keep the power. So usually I see that as a pretty good sign that I'm on the right path, because they just want to keep people out. It's become a good old boys club to them.
Yeah, the career politician is really a problem.
100%.
100%.
Mm-hmm. So, and there will be a lot of changes coming in the years to come, I believe. And one of those changes may actually happen here in Indiana within the next year here. Let's talk now. Well, okay, before we get into the weeds on politics, family. Tell me about your family.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm married to amazing wife. Her name is Susan. She was a Miss Indiana in 2006. So she's traveled the state just as much as I have, and she's got she's kind of the honey. I'm the vinegar. Sometimes I'm the lightning rod, but people look at her and they say, "Man, she's so sweet." So I guess you can't be that bad of a guy if married somebody like that. So she really is. She's amazing. We have two little kids, little boy and a little girl, Brody and Savannah. They're Brody's 6. He's all in on soccer, and Savannah's 4, and she's a little artist. She loves to sing. So it's just God's blessed us and really given us an amazing just family. And we struggled to get pregnant, and we went through a season where we had to really wait on the Lord, and we knew God was wanted to give us a family, but it was a hard season that if you've ever walked through infertility, it's not easy, but yeah, God was good and faithful through it all. And so, now we have 2 beautiful miracles, and we're loving life.
How about with young kids? This is a very demanding job that you're going after. How will you balance all of that out?
Well, that's always the goal, right? Is to serve the community, go and make a difference in the world, but not to forget about your most important call, which is to be a husband and a father. And really, our nation is rooted in families. Right? If we have strong families, we'll have strong communities, which will make a strong state. And so I'm going to be a huge advocate for making sure that parents, and especially fathers, are stepping up and being the men that God has called you to be. And so I've got to make sure that I carve out time, and there's not going to be anything that is more important than me being a father and a husband. And so it's a balance. It's not easy, but I've given up some speaking engagements on the campaign trail because there's something going on at home, and you have to weigh that. You say, all right, you ask the Lord, ultimately, God, direct my steps. If God is, if he's opening the door, then nobody can shut it. And if he's shutting the door, then nobody can open it. And so I'm just trusting that I'm going to be able to do the very best I can do. I'm not going to sacrifice my family to get this done. If God wants this to happen, then I just have to be faithful to do what I'm able to do, and he'll make a way. So that's really my mindset. But yeah, it's not easy, and it's certainly my wife and I have that conversation a lot. Where's the family time this week, and so but it's important, and so we carve out that time. Absolutely.
Great, good to hear. So let's get a little bit now into the weeds on politics. Well, Indiana term limits the governor. So Eric Holcomb has hit the end of his 2 terms, which created a jump ball for everybody in the state to decide they want to throw their hat into the arena. And of course they're going to run as Republicans because that's the most likely party to win the governorship in this state. All right, so we've got now for lieutenant governor, the thing that's different, and I'm kind of surprised at how early you and others have come out of the gate on this, because the process for lieutenant governor is different than it is for governor. You're not actually on the ballot in the primary. The
Correct.
weeding out
Correct.
process happens at the convention. Okay.
That's right.
So, so you'll be determined by, I don't even remember how many delegates attend the state.
It'll probably be about 1,600. It varies every convention, but typically 16 to 1,700 delegates.
Mm-hmm. And so you'll have these 1,600 or so delegates that show up in Indianapolis during the summer, and they will vote on who they want to see being the running mate, basically, for the gubernatorial candidate. The gubernatorial candidate will be already determined, because that happens in May. So then it's a little different than in presidential politics. It's the same concept, but a little variation on that. So what happens? You have two paths to the office. Okay. The first path is you've aligned with Curtis Hill, right?
Yeah, we're good. We're good friends. We get along well.
Right. So the likelihood is, if Curtis were to win the primary, that Curtis would then advocate for you as the lieutenant governor. Oh, the other candidates for governor have people that I heard one of the candidates talking just the other day about having their choice for lieutenant governor already picked out. So they'll be advocating. So either Curtis gets in and advocates for you, or another candidate wins in the primary and advocates for somebody else for lieutenant governor, and you have played the politics side of it well enough to get a majority vote out of the delegates at the convention. Is that?
That's right. No, that's a good summary. Now, I'll say this. Curtis and I align on policy issues fairly well, but there's no saying that he will pick me even if he gets elected. I mean, we haven't really had that conversation in detail on saying, hey, would this be something that you would do if you win the primary? And I'm not really asking any of the gubernatorial candidates to do that, because I really believe that this is the delegates' decision. The delegates are elected by the people in May during the primary, and then the delegates go to the convention, and they have the responsibility of picking a lieutenant governor. And what I've wanted to see for many years is that the delegates actually are able to pick their best option. I don't like it when a politician, even if I agree with the politician on 99% of everything that they do, I don't like it that they are telling the delegates who to pick. In our state, we have given the delegates the authority. We should trust the delegates to pick who they want. And so I'm really running a campaign not to any of the gubernatorial candidates. Most lieutenant governor wannabes will get cozy with a candidate. They'll say, hey, I'll pay you $35,000 or however much money, and I'll give you this county if you pick me as your lieutenant governor. That's not good politics. That creates crony politics. That creates a good old boys club, and that's not how our founders set this up. And we need to go back to the intent of the lieutenant governor's office is a people's office, not a politician's office. And so I'm running to the people saying, hey, if you're going to be a delegate, why don't I give you an option to choose somebody you believe holds your values, will stand up and fight for your values, and be a good teammate to whoever the gubernatorial nominee is. I'm not looking to be, just a thorn in the flesh every chance I get, but I will be a strong voice of conservative constitutional values, and the delegates and the people can trust that I won't back down if I need to be that voice standing up for our liberties.
So the fact that you've come into this race this early, which I mean, you're not unusual. Everybody's jumping pretty early on this race. Um, your real mission, I'm just guessing here, is to reach out to people and hopefully meet people who are going to become delegates to the convention.
Yeah, 100%. That's it. I have a pretty small target audience, 1,800 people, give or take. And, I'm going off of past delegate attendance. I don't know who the delegates are going to be in 2024, but I know who the delegates were in 2022. So I can seemingly call 1,800 people. There's about 1,800 delegates at that convention. There'll probably be a little less at this one because it goes off of the Secretary of State elections and the turnout and all that stuff. So I'm calling all of those people from 2022 and saying, hey, I'm running for lieutenant governor. Let me tell you a little bit about my platform. Can I answer any questions for you? And, if I do this well and I get to enough of the potential delegates, well, then come the convention time, we'll have a majority of the delegates supporting me, and I'll be on that ticket as a strong lieutenant governor to whoever the gubernatorial nominee is after the primary.
This is going to be a very, very interesting campaign. We've just had, I just read Brian Howie's column talking about the newest entry into the governor's run, which is Brad Chambers, somebody I've never heard of before, but apparently has a pretty good pocket full of money, which is the same story with Eric Doden, who is another businessman who can afford to kind of self-finance a lot of what he's done. Mike Braun, of course, is in this race. Mike was a total unknown before running for Senate, and took $5 million out of his own pocket to get his name recognition out there for that race for state senator. And then you've got Jamie Rittenauer, who has been all over the place, speaking every chance she gets. Curtis Hill, of course, and there are three recognizable names in the mix here, which is Curtis, Mike Braun, and Suzanne Crouch. Mike and Suzanne are both from southern Indiana, or as we sometimes refer to us as northern Kentucky, just because we've always had that the state see us that way. But who knows how many other people might decide to throw themselves in, and nobody's going to win with a majority here. That's the other thing that's going to be interesting out of this primary is that we're going to be looking at results that somebody's going to win by a plurality, but how much is this going to get diced up?
Quite a bit.
Could a person win the primary with 30%?
That's what I've been saying. I think Brad Chambers getting in the race will dice up that vote enough that a Curtis Hill potentially could win with 25 to 30% of the primary vote turnout. And that's kind of, shocking. But again, we're seeing a lot of people in a lot of different lanes. And so it's all going to come down to turnout, who shows up on the primary day. And I will say this, I'm a competition guy. I love the fact that we have a lot of candidates in there. I love that there's many different lanes, and let's see where the people of Indiana, where Hoosiers leaning, and again, a Brad Chambers would certainly follow in the footsteps of an Eric Holcomb. So if you liked an Eric Holcomb, you're probably going to like a Brad Chambers. But if you want somebody that's that outsider, fight against the mold kind of person, Curtis Hill's probably that guy. And then you got Mike Braun and Suzanne Crouch and Eric Doden that are kind of right there as well. And so, and then again, Jamie Rittenauer, you mentioned Jamie. She's got an amazing heart for the Lord. I love her faith that she has in the Lord. And so I think that really this field is shaping up. It has something for everybody. If you want, it really does.
And I think that it's going to come down to the competition is going to be who can out conservative the others, right? Because certainly Suzanne is taking a very conservative approach with her Axe the Tax theme in her ads. You know that Mike Braun is wanting to own that conservative branch, and so is Curtis. So this is really going to come down to be a really interesting time. And politics in Indiana have started an upheaval process in the Republican Party. That conservative wing of the party is starting to figure a few things out, and they showed that at the last convention when the sitting Secretary of State, the incumbent Secretary of State, was voted out, and a new person put in, and she was not only the incumbent, but she was the governor's choice for that role too. And the folks at the convention turned that around, and I kind of wonder if that might not be the case that'll happen again at the convention coming up this year.
Yeah, I think you have to remember that the Mitch Daniels era of politics was good for the season because our financial house wasn't in order, and praise God for a guy like Mitch Daniels who was willing to take the financial bull by the horns, and I think he really set us up. But I think what you're seeing is, Mitch wouldn't really address the cultural issues or the social issues, which is all right. I mean, again, for the season, we need to get our financial house in order. Well, we've gotten our financial house in order to some extent, and now you're seeing the Mitch Daniels kind of Republicans who say, oh, well, that worked for Mitch Daniels. Let's not address these cultural issues. But here's the thing. The culture has become so in your face. You literally have public schools teaching little boys that they can be little girls. That was not happening back in 2007 when Mitch Daniels was governor. All right. But now you're saying, you're being told as parents, if you don't affirm a child wanting to change their genders, you're somehow a bigot or somehow wrong. Those cultural issues have now become kitchen table issues. And the Republican Party of the Holcomb team, they don't want to address that. They won't touch that with a 20-foot pole. We even saw that when Governor Holcomb vetoed the women's sports bill, right? He's like, oh, it's not happening here in Indiana. We don't need to worry about that kind of stuff. Well, no, it's coming. It is happening here, and it's going to continue to happen here if we don't stand up and say enough's enough. And so the new conservative wing, or the wave that we're riding here in Indiana, is a response to that. And it's not that conservatives wanted this battle. I mean, it's not a culture war that we wanted to fight. We're being forced to fight it. And I think there's a rhino aspect within the Republican Party, or a moderate leftist kind of, I call them the Republican wing of the Democrat Party. And so they, it's those people in Indiana that want to say, oh, don't touch the cultural stuff, the woke stuff. We're not going to call it woke. We're not going to, we just need to focus on economics and just building strong businesses. Well, you can't have a strong economic house if the foundations of your culture are degrading right underneath your feet. And so that's what I think you're seeing with the Curtis Hills and the Diego Moraleses, and this absolute rejection of the moderate rhino mentality, if you will, and going back to conservative values. So yes, even people like Suzanne Crouch, who've been a part of the Holcomb team, she's recognizing that there are people who are really ticked off that this culture war has come now into their house, and they're fighting back. And she's echoing what so many people around Indiana are saying. And I hear it all the time on the campaign trail. These culture war issues are now kitchen table issues. It used to be, the union stuff and making, just the money, the paychecks. No, it's culture stuff now. It's drag shows at your kid's library, right? Like, that's what we're dealing with. Parents don't want that to be in their kids' purview, and yet we're being forced to endure that when the left comes out and says, no, you better take this hypersexualization of your children, or else you're somehow a bigot. And I think good leaders are the ones like the Ron DeSantis's that are stepping up and they're saying, enough's enough, not in my state. And Indiana, unfortunately, has not had that leadership over the last 8 years. We have not had a leader who has stepped up and fought those culture war issues. And I ask that when I'm traveling the state, Johnny. I say, who is the one leader that we can rally around in Indiana to stand for truth and to fight for you? I never get an answer from anyone. I'll ask this at Republican clubs, at Lincoln Day dinners. I'll say, who's the Republican leader that we all can rally around in this room? And nobody has an answer. That's really disheartening that we, as a Republican state, a supermajority legislature, we do not have a leader that we can point to and say, that's our guy, that's our gal, let's go. In Florida, if I were to ask that in any Lincoln Day dinner down in Florida and say, who's the leader that you rally behind? Who are they going to say? They're going to say Ron DeSantis. They all know, like, why is that not happening here in Indiana? And so that's one of the reasons I'm running, is to give strong leadership that backbone and courage that we need in Indiana.
And you are reaching out to groups, or groups are reaching out to you even on this. Groups like RAINS, which is a part of that that conservative wing, and that's who you're going to be speaking to when you come into Evansville later this week.
Yeah, that's right. On Thursday, looking forward to it. It's going to be a great event, and I always tell people, bring their tough questions. I want the cultural issues, the constitutional issues, the faith issues, whatever those hard questions that you're wrestling with. Bring those. Ask them. I have wrestled with those same questions, and if I don't know what I know and know why I know it, then I don't deserve to be your lieutenant governor. But if I can address those tough cultural issues, those political issues, those faith issues, then maybe you'll say, okay, I think this guy's got a good perspective and would lead well for a time. I don't want to be a career politician, just FYI. I'm doing my service to the nation by stepping up and leading when being called upon. But I hope to raise up good leaders and then to pass the torch to them, down the road here in a few short years, so that I can, come back into the private sector and live a life of peace. So.
The movement that's happening right now in the state of Indiana, and I'll refer to it as a movement because it's still a young process. And remember, years ago the Tea Party was all the buzz, right? And this isn't the Tea Party anymore. But you've got this group of people on that very conservative end of the Republican Party who they're learning that they need to become delegates to the convention. They're also learning that they need to become precinct committee persons, because that's where control happens for the party. And that determination of whether as a party the Republicans move further to the right or further to the left, that comes to play out of those groups. They have the ability to be able to influence that swing.
That's a great point, Johnny. For many years, we've gotten to the ballot in November, and we have said, why am I always picking between the lesser of two evils, right? Like, how many times do you hear that? Well, it's because we don't jump into the game until the last minute of the fourth quarter. And then we expect there to be a good outcome. That's not how it happens. You've got to get involved in the first quarter. If you want to have a good end of the game, well, you've got to get involved early on. And in Indiana, the process is, it starts with the precinct committeemen and it starts with the delegates. And if you don't have, I call those two positions the lifeblood of the party. And if you want good candidates in the Republican Party, you have to have good precinct committeemen and you have to have good delegates. But so many people don't know what those are, and then they don't do anything about it, even when they do know what those are. So I'm encouraging good people who know the Constitution, who are limited government in their mindset, and have a strong faith in a creator, just like our Declaration of Independence says. I'm encouraging those people to run for precinct committeemen and to run for delegates. And it's a very easy, if you're listening to this, it's a very easy way to serve. A delegate's just a one-day commitment. You run, you get elected, and then you go to the convention in June of 2024. You serve that one day. It's just a few hours, and then you're done. There's nothing else left. And if you want to be a delegate again in 2 years, you have to run again and do the process all over again. But you elect at the convention good state party candidates, and then you also approve the party bylaws and the party platform. And within the party platform, it talks about who we are as Republicans. And a few years ago, in 2018, the Holcomb team tried to remove traditional marriage from being in the party platform. And it was because we had good delegates who were conservative, faith and family-minded people that were there. We had enough of those people to say, no, absolutely not. As a party, we recognize that marriage, ultimately the gold standard is what God says it is. It's marriage between one man and one woman. And we don't have the right to redefine marriage because we didn't create marriage. We're going to hold true to what marriage is by God's standards as a Republican Party in Indiana. and we rejected the Holcomb team's attempt to remove traditional marriage from the party platform. But if we didn't have good delegates, we would actually be a party now in Indiana that would be saying marriage can be whatever you want it to be. It can be, you can marry your dog if you want to, and that's marriage, and yet we had good delegates who stopped that. So it's very important, the delegate process and the precinct committeeman process.
And the process to become that is really very simple. It's you have to go to your county clerk's office or local election office in January?
That's right. In January, the filing deadline is usually the first week in February. So you basically get the second week in January to the first week in February to file.
Go and do that by all means. I have been an appointed precinct committeeman, and I want to do it legitimately now because I want to. I don't want anybody to have I don't want to feel obligated to somebody. To the local party chairman. I want to be that voice representing other conservative voices in the community. So I'm definitely going to be involved in this process coming up, and just want to encourage a lot of other people to do the same thing.
That's good. It is important. And, it's interesting. You said an appointed PC or delegate, the party chairman in your county, if there's not enough people that run for the precinct committeeman spot or the delegate spots, then the party chairman gets to appoint people into those positions. And again, the precinct committeemen elect the county chairman. So if you don't have good precinct committeemen, you're not going to have a good county chairman. And then if no one runs for precinct committeemen, a bad county chairman gets to appoint his crony friends or her crony friends into the precinct committeemen, who then re-elect them to be the county chair. So you see, it's the snowball effect of cronyism begets cronyism. And so the way to stop that is for good people like yourself, Johnny, to run for those offices. Because if you are elected into precinct committeeman spots or delegate spots, you cannot be removed from those spots. But if you're appointed by your chairman, guess what? You serve at the pleasure of the chairman. And so he might wake up one day and say, I didn't like the shoes that Micah was wearing the other day. I'm going to remove him from his appointment as a PC. Or they could do something to the effect of, hey, Johnny, you better vote for me as your chairman, or if you won't vote for me, I'm going to remove you as a precinct committeeman. So you're really stuck. But when you run and you're elected by the people in your precinct or in your delegate district, then they are the ones that put you there. You cannot be removed. You get to do what you believe is the right thing to do.
Well, Micah, I really appreciate your time today. This is one of those things, I just looked at the clock and realized time flies when you don't know what you're doing. And so the time has flown by here today, and I really appreciate you sharing your viewpoint, and God bless you. Give those kids a great big hug for me. All right.
Thank you, Johnny. I appreciate it. Thank you for what you're doing and for having me on. And this does go by fast. I did not realize we've already been 45 minutes. I think we've been talking. So it's been a pleasure. And if anyone wants to know more about what I'm doing, you can go to micahbeckwith.com. And I've got a couple delegate videos on how to become a delegate up on my website. So if you like what you were hearing, but you're like, oh, what was he saying about filing and all that stuff? Well, there's a video that I posted that I just walk you through the process from point A to point B. And it just gives you everything you need so that you feel confident when you become a delegate or when you want to file to run for delegate or precinct committeeman.
Great. Appreciate it, Micah. Be sure that you like this video and subscribe, because that way you'll keep updated every time that we post a new video. We've got some interesting people coming up. We'll be talking to the Evansville mayoral candidates to get their viewpoints coming up, as well as city council candidates for Evansville. And we're going to bring in one of the political science professors from USI to talk about this political landscape locally and statewide as well. So don't miss out on an episode. Be sure to subscribe and like us, and we'll see you again next week on This Week in Evansville.